Bonus edition of the Loochador Podcast brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We did not go to Academy this week. It is coming.
How do you know?
Well, we didn't go as a group.
Oh, yeah.
You probably went separately. I have not gone this week. That's a fact. I've been dealing with some stuff.
I'm still evaluating.
I purchased the last time I went. In fact, I've purchased the last couple times I've gone.
I think tonight would be a great time for me to go, right before or after dinner. I have to check the hours. I know they close at 9 on weeknights. To check the hours, maybe go in after dinner. But like I said, I need more than 20 minutes. I need to carve out a solid hour. And there's so much going on in there in a good way that I need to go into Academy with a plan.
Yeah, you
I've got to go with a plan. I think I'm going to walk in and generally go middle left. I'm going to be left-brained in Academy this time. I've done the scouting. It's left. Normally when I go in Academy, I have a specific thing I want, and that's why I go.
You can get lost there.
I've never gone in like, when you're a kid, you'd go into Toys R Us, and you might not. Well, I guess you probably, when you're a kid, you do have a plan.
You know where you're going. Yeah.
That's kind of how I go into Academy.
It was a Nintendo
It's like
for
adults Toys R Us. You got everything I want. I know what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going, for some boots. What do you call them? Hunting boots?
Yeah, that was funny.
Waders. I'm going for a fishing pole.
Can I tell you something about my Academy experience?
Yeah.
There was a time that my Academy experience was to the left. Okay?
Mhm.
It was the shoes, the boxing stuff.
Sporting equipment.
Right? And now
They got some cool weight stuff.
they do. And
I'm
now
looking for
that
the weighted vest.
I'm
Academy.
a hunter fisher / I go to the meetings, I do the full store. The entire store. It's like when I started listening to country music, I have a whole new station to listen to.
You don't even know what you've been missing.
Yeah. Just like when you started listening to Bad Bunny. Same thing.
Hadn't happened yet.
Oh, you've heard some songs. Stephen McGee jams it. All right,
I don't like it.
I got an issue with that. So we've talked about this game for years. We've talked about it this week.
Mm-hmm.
We are now the day before, or roughly the day before, actually 2 days before. You know what I mean. We're right here. It's here. We can taste it, right?
Yep.
It's a Thanksgiving Eve feel to it. And it's here. Just now that we're here, it actually means everything that we thought it could mean.
I would have thought, you think of all the years A&M and Texas could have played in the last 13 that wouldn't have had these stakes, right? Of the last 13 years, first of all, never would they have these stakes. That first year of Texas and A&M being apart would have been massive, with Johnny Manziel playing against the coach that viewed him as a safety. The school one of the, it was them, then it was TCU, A&M, the school he would have gone to if all things were equal, which they weren't, thank God. But the coach and Mac Brown that viewed him as a safety, and the quarterback, he would have literally had to clinch the Heisman Trophy, and would have that year, by the way. You're done to them just like he did OU. Clinch the Heisman Trophy against Texas, right? And that game would have actually been in Austin. Okay, so that one would have been massive. There haven't been many in the time, and that wouldn't compare to what's about to happen here.
Yep.
There haven't been any in that time period where it would have been this significant. In fact, I don't even know when. And you go back in time, and there's been so few, Nuño, where the stakes have been this high. I think in 1995, Texas beat A&M at Kyle Field. I hear him out there. I'm not going to remind him of this game because he played in it, I think. I don't know if Hunter played that one. In 1995, though, A&M lost. Yeah, he did play in it. They lost to Texas 16-6 at Kyle Field.
Let's kick him.
Hunter and his team lost to Texas, and he let me down. He ruined my freaking Thanksgiving. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, hey, Hunter.
Hey,
You're bringing that in?
Come join us.
What?
Come on in, sir.
Come on.
I want to sit between you and Nuño after this assault.
So Hunter just sat down. We're talking about the last time, I said the only A&M Texas
Give you a
game,
little more room.
You're good.
Hunter, since the Aggies joined the conference that would have had massive stakes would have actually been that first year, because it would have been A&M left the Big 12. It would have been SEC A&M versus Big 12 Texas, first year out. Johnny against the guy that thought he was a safety, and probably Johnny clinching the Heisman Trophy in Austin.
Right.
Okay, that's the only one, because one team was up, one was down.
Yep.
Texas was generally down that time. A&M was rarely up. So I had to go back, and I'm like, okay, in 98, the Aggies lost to Texas, but they had already clinched the Big 12 title game.
Right.
In
meaningless.
99 was the most meaningful bonfire game, but it had no postseason stakes. When you guys played them, I was joking when you walked in here, y'all lost. You beat them in 94 in Austin. You beat the Tar.
Beat them in 93, beat them in 94, lost them in 95.
In 95, you were still on that team, right? Or were you? Okay. So, yeah, that was 16-6, and I think that was for the Southwest Conference title, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's the last time both teams had title both teams were playing for something beyond bowl positioning. That you were a young man back then. So was I.
I feel like I'm a young man now.
Yeah, you look a lot
boxing me
younger.
in?
You look young still, but
Thank
you
you.
look younger. So that long ago, though, is the last time that both teams have taken the field
Right.
with a chance to win a conference championship. And
It's insane.
maybe there's some deal if there would have been 3 ups, but I mean, just straight up, when you play for a championship. Back then, it was win a championship, go to the Cotton Bowl. That's a long ass time, and it's 13 years since these teams have even played. I just want you to start with your personal feelings on this rivalry, and give us the real quick history. Most people know it. You know, they know you, they know the history, but for those that don't, your really quick history with Texas, which I don't know if you know this,
I don't
Nuño,
know.
to be honest with you.
So
Start there, and then I want
My-
your feelings on the rivalry.
my father played at Texas, recruited by Darrell Royal in 1958, was there for 4 years, back in the, Barney
Glory
Rubble
days.
days. They actually had freshman teams. They were called the Shorthorns. So my dad came back and coached the Shorthorns. Dennis Gehring, who's still with us, coached the Aggie freshman team. So essentially, back in those days, I think they would play on Thursdays or Fridays, but every college team had a freshman-only team, and they would play separate and apart from the varsity team. So my dad played there for Darrell Royal, was a war number 60, which is now retired, Tommy Novus's number.
Yeah.
So I grew up, I can't even say it. So
Which is
my
crazy to me, knowing you.
And I
only
think
as
the other
an-
relevance is from a small hometown, or my hometown is Belleville, Texas. The Coy family, who were Longhorn legends, lived 3 doors down from me. Mr. Coy Sr., I held in extremely high regard. In my eyes, he was like Babe Ruth, and actually played with the Yankees, was the first 2-sport professional athlete, played for the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Yankees. Had a treasure trove, literally the old school treasure chest that as a young man I would go play with. And he had Red Grange, Wyatt Tittle, Yogi Berra, all the signed balls from, Mickey Mantle. It's insane, the stuff that I would just handle and touch.
Right.
And it should have been in, the Baseball Hall of Fame. But grew up there. Both my sister and I really, as young kids, would probably attend 4 or 5 games a year at Memorial Stadium. I think that was back in the Fred Akers and David McWilliams window. A guy by the name of Kenneth Hackamack, who is also Belleville grad, he was a D tackle there. His counterpart was there was Steve Llewellyn, I can't believe I'm remembering this, Ken Hackamack, and Rockney Allen. Rockney Allen was such an impression on me that my son's name is Rockney, named after Rockney Allen, who was a legend. And those 3 guys were kind of the all beef patty,
and he was
D tackles.
He was related to Dan.
He's Dan's first cousin. So that was really the common bond that Dan and I had when Dan came on his recruiting trip. At the time, I think committed to the U. I think he was
Dan Campbell was committed to the U.
to Miami.
I think you're right.
And,
what a weird
and
fit
we,
that would have been.
And we
from
flipped,
Glen Rose
we
to
flipped,
South Beach.
We flipped Glen Rose's finest. By the way, I was the host. I think my record, I remember coaches used to fight because my record was about bad at 1,000.
Yeah.
You needed them to come to Aggie Land and you put them with me, and miraculously.
I don't want to know how that happened
anyways,
back then.
I'm rambling. Here's what I'm going to finish. I grew up watching, attending, going to, watching my dad get kicked out. My grandmother was a devout Baptist, and every Thanksgiving, they played it on Thanksgiving. Yep. He would start cussing. She would make him literally get his plate of food and go outside because you were not allowed to cuss. And I remember like walking outside.
That tradition has not been carried on.
No, that's been lost on my generation. So
we'll blame the Needhams.
We'll blame the Needhams for weakening that. But I remember vividly walking outside and like, Dad, you need another roll? And he's sitting out there just pissed off eating his food because he got kicked out for cussing. So, I think that is the reality. And then when I decided,
when did that change?
I wanted to go there, it's my dream. And, the good Lord had a different path, a much wiser one.
Well, the good Lord and John Mackovic.
And so, had an awful, awful experience with him in particular. What was Gary Darnell? I can't believe that. So Gary Darnell at the time as a tight end coach really liked him. He actually came back later and was a D coordinator for us. But when I went on
beat Texas
with
Liucci McGee.
I like Darnell. So anyways, long story, this could go on for an hour, but my hatred for them really stymied from that experience where went there with my father, who in my eyes was royalty, went there with Mr. Coy Sr., who both of his sons were All-Americans at Texas. Both of them are on that famous Time magazine with Nixon, I think when they won the Natty in 64 or 62. Ted and Ernie bookended Nixon in that famous photograph. So I'm with royalty of Texas Longhorn lore, and Mackovic was just an ass. I mean, just disrespectful. So the minute that, and if you've ever been in a room with people, and maybe I'll land the plane. There's people who, no matter who you are, make you feel welcome, make you feel like you're part of the team, make the janitor or the person sweeping the broom closet, they take the time to say hello, right? And they make them feel like they're a human being that deserves to be recognized. And then there's other people who walk around high and mighty, and they're assholes, and they're not nice, and they disrespect people, and it's all about them, and that's all they think about. And I'm not going to say it's Liucci yet.
Go eat outside. You don't cuss in the house.
But I think that embodies most of what I think about.
And then you met RC.
And then I met RC, didn't want to like him, liked him. Genuine. We went to Tom's Barbecue and had the Aggie special on wax paper, onion, pickle, beef brisket. It was solid, little piece of cheddar cheese.
Yeah, the cheddar.
I can't believe Tom's is gone, but anyways, so that's how I became an Aggie.
Southwest Parkway?
This one was,
Texas
Southwest Parkway.
All right, so
torn down.
Now, what does it mean to you for this game to be back? Are you just more pissed about it? Not that they're playing, but has it just renewed this anger? Like, I kind of want a camera crew on you Saturday night.
No, here's what I'm going to say, Billy, is that I think this is what's interesting to me, is that Texas A&M, when you and I met and we became close, we were clearly less of a program, not from a player standpoint, not from a quality. We beat them a lot, but just from the stature. It was very easy for us to be competitive because metaphorically we had an average car, couldn't afford power windows, a smaller car, our house wasn't as big, we lived in the suburbs and we weren't wealthy. And we were going up against what is easy to hate, bigger house, bigger car, and they reminded you of it every day. So it was very, very easy to disdain, dislike, desire to knock that person off the pedestal. What's really spooks me about today is Texas A&M is no longer living at the bottom in the outhouse. We've moved up to the penthouse, and just like I think with generational wealth, it takes time for people to know how to live with money.
Sure.
And I think money can ruin you, and money can change you, and kind of. What's the Coach Salih, I think was his name, that got fired at the Jets?
Solid
Robert. He had a good saying, it's stolen from our boy Chris Cooper, that the thing he liked about NIL is that money is going to show you the type of person you're dealing with, right? It's going to bring that out. If they have low character, they're a bad person, money's going to manifest that and make it very abundantly clear that's the person they are. So with that thought, the question is, can this newer, wealthier, bigger car having, nicer house having, living in the nicest, subdivision, Aggie group, still bring the hate, the disdain, and want to knock them off? So I probably, some would say, well, you should get beyond that. I'll never forget the way I was treated. I'll never forget the way that the entitlement, the way that people act like they're better than you. I wouldn't do that to you no matter what. I never, ever, I pride myself on not leading it with or talking about me. I think when you have conversations with people, it should be about them, and that's what endears them. That's what makes people like you.
Yes.
Where I just feel like every time I'm around, and I shouldn't be this way. There's exceptions to every rule, but to me, that is if I had to put a picture or define what they represent, it's I'm better than you, even though I'm not. I'm wealthier than you, even though I'm not. I've accomplished more than you, even though I haven't. But I'm going to live that way and put it in projected in your face every freaking day, all the time, and it pisses me off. There.
That was great.
That's a hell of a start. And we just started. That was like you watch.
I feel better.
Yeah, dude. Just good. When you start a TV show like Yellowstone, and you're watching it, and you're like, oh my God, that person just got killed. What? And then all of a sudden they do the opening credits, and you're like, wait a second, I've been watching this for. That's what just happened.
But this opening credits has been 22 minutes.
Yeah.
Has it really?
Yeah.
Well, not your part. Your part's been 14.
Whew.
Aggies, Longhorns.
I got to get on the time clock.
Aggies, Longhorns, Kyle Field. We got your background. The hatred is real. It's real on both sides. We hate them. They hate us. I hope we hate them more this weekend because I think it's going to take a lot of that to win this game, because the reality is I've said this, Hunter. I don't think they're elite like compared to some of the elite teams A&M has seen in the SEC, but I think they're elite in college football this year. I think they're as good as anybody. I think there are several teams that can beat that. They're not invincible, but they're elite in 2024 college football. They got a ton of NFL guys. In year year four, Sark's built it, and you're year one under Elko.
Yep.
And you know what? You're going to take the field Saturday night, and I think we all know, and I want to break it down with you over the next little bit, A&M's got a chance to win this football game. And to me, as we sit here today, that's what you asked for. You have a chance to keep them out of Atlanta in their first damn year, and all that stuff you talked about, and they come in and go in year one, and the one thing standing between them is Mike Elko, Texas A&M, and 110,000 at Kyle Field at night. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because instead of relying on Bama, or Georgia, or LSU, or Oklahoma to do it, it's A&M. And oh, by the way, if you win, you're going, and you're playing for the SEC title for the first time in 13 years.
And I don't lose my credibility. Here's what I would say is, of the 12 teams that make the playoffs, I think probably 6 to 7 will belong, and the other 5 or 6 won't.
Yeah.
And with that, I think they're in that upper echelon group.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of really, really talented, good football teams that should be in that remainder 6 who are going to be left behind because they played much tougher schedules and much tougher venues.
We're going to close.
We'll close on that. But I agree with you. They're a really good football team. They got a lot of talent. Their front 5, I think, is pretty good, really good. Their tackles are reportedly first. One's a first-round pick. So we'll see. I mean, are they 5-star at every position? No, but no team is.
Yeah.
And are we pretty good? I think we're pretty good.
So let me ask you this then: the last couple weeks, what have you seen? If you're trying to tell me, kind of what's happened in the last couple of weeks, when the last time we saw A&M in a conference game here, they were outscoring LSU 31-6 in the second half. What have you seen that's happened since then, where they've been outscored, 35-0 to start these 2 SEC road games? What's your concern in how they've been playing?
I mean, inconsistency, dumb penalties, and just haven't gotten. I know this word's overused because I hate everybody says it rhythm, but we just don't seem to have rhythm right off the bat. And defensively, we've not played very well in the first half either. So you kind of take a slow starting offense that's out of rhythm. And it's one thing if the defense is causing that lack of rhythm, right? They're knocking the quarterback off his spot, they're stopping the run, but a lot of times they're self-inflicted wounds, and we just seem to be our timing's a little off, right? So that's been a big hindrance, and I think playing on the road, not to make an excuse, but we were a better team than Auburn, but you can't spot a team 21 points.
Yep. Nuño.
I'm going to bounce after this. Happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate you.
Eat a
Happy
bunch.
Thanksgiving.
So with this team playing at home against that Texas team that you know a little bit, what do you think has to happen Saturday night for A&M to win? Give me 3 things that you say we will not be talking about an A&M win if these 3 things don't happen.
Well, I like to simplify the game in my head, and it can be simplified. So here's the first thing I would say is that and this isn't a bash of Sark, but it's almost like whatever one announcer says, the next 20 repeat that. What is constantly regurgitated time and time again is what an amazing tactical person he is. And it's the same thing. Remind you, it's the same thing they said about Lincoln Riley at USC. They're not saying that right now, but yet he's still the same guy.
Yeah.
Because it's not the tactical matters a little, but you got to have the dudes that can execute. So here's what I would say. When you look at that Texas offense and you look at the quarterback play specifically, he does a really good job as a coordinator of giving his quarterback very distinct windows. And I kind of will take the field and break it into thirds. He has a first third, a second third, and a deep third. And he has very clear vertical separation. And he loves to get his back and tight ends out of the backfield. And if you look at their body types and you look at the way they play, and once again, I'm not bashing anyone, but
you can bash.
The thing that let's take the position I know well. The tight end there is all about finesse. He wants to run routes. He wants to get out and go quick. He does not want to be put into a box. And the last thing he wants to do, and I would say the same with their backs, is be asked to protect and to stay in. So the way you have to beat that Texas offense is you must be able to put pressure with 4. You have to have your downs win, and you have to start knocking that quarterback off the spot. If you let him sit back there and have 3, 4, 5 seconds,
for 400.
He'll go for 400 or 500, and he'll get into an immediate rhythm, and it'll have very disastrous consequences.
No doubt.
So we've got to find a way. I think our defensive line, we've talked a lot about how good they are. Prove it, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is the game where if you are the player that you say you are, if you are the player that a lot of the talking heads want to anoint you with, because here's who you won't fool. You won't fool those guys on Sunday, right? They're going to be there and they're going to watch. So if you are the guy you think you are, and you're a first, second round pick, as many of these guys are being anointed, let's see it. That means that if you're one-on-one with a tackle, that's the same guy you're going to face on Sunday. You better win. You can't have that guy beat you time in and time out. And if they can release the backs and tight ends quickly, and they can get them out and attack the middle part of the field,
that's where you die. Yeah.
We're dying because then he will do easy throws that don't put at risk.
Boom.
He'll dunk. They'll attack that deep third. And then after you get lulled to sleep to come up and stop those 15, 12-yard catches, they'll hit you over the top and you're cooked. What did Georgia do? Whatever their D linemen are supposed to be, they, as Denny Green said, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
They dominated those 2 tackles. They got push at the center, who to me is someone they can attack. You've got to attack the middle. The middle of that pocket has got to collapse, and Quinn Ewers has got to be made uncomfortable. If they can do that, you will keep this a low-scoring game, and if it's a low-scoring game, I like our chances.
I agree with everything you said, and Quinn Ewers is a quarterback that Texas fans have just got so defensive before the year when I said Quinn Ewers inconsistent. His highs are very high, and there are times where he looks very pedestrian. But when he looks, but like a lot of quarterbacks, I just think his peaks and valley, it's a wider margin than most quarterbacks. When he gets pressured and he's uncomfortable and he's off time, you make him go off schedule, his valleys are much lower than his, that gap is monumental, and it changes who they are as an offense and as a result as a football team. I worry, Hunter, about the A&M right now from the last 2 weeks on the back end. And I don't know if they're trying to run some more zone. Like, they've got to run more zone defense, I think, against it. That's what Kirby Smart did that. Never does that. He did it against them, and like you said, got there with 4. But when I saw them try to do that against Auburn, it looked confused.
Disastrous,
they looked confused.
right.
It looked bad. That's my biggest concern of this football game. My second one.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
So, because you made 2 points there, and I got to counter. So, the first point you made, Eli Manning, New York Giants,
Yep.
the one year that they beat Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, New England Patriots.
Yep.
That was a very pedestrian Super Bowl for Tom Brady. Why?
The front four.
Front four destroyed him.
OC, who was that? That wasn't even Strahan then.
No, Strahan was gone by
OC Umanura, Justin Tuck, Rocky Bernard.
Rocky
was involved in
Bernard.
that, yeah.
So when you go look at the greatest of all time, and so not picking on Quinn Ewers, we're getting the greatest of all time.
Yeah, anybody.
You take Tom Brady, you make him uncomfortable, you take away all those shallow dink and dunk, easy throws, high completion throws that get a quarterback in rhythm, and let him go 8 for 9 or 9 for 12 early on, he's a different guy.
Yeah.
And now you're asking him to make tight window throws vertically down the field, and you're playing from behind. And now with those tight ends having to stay in and do what they don't want to do, those backs to block guys coming through the A and B gap, that's not what this Texas team wants to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to support your comment.
Yeah.
You have to make him uncomfortable, and it not only will affect Quinn Ewers, it affects the greatest of all time, number one.
True.
Number two, the back end. And I think this is, Billy, one of the greatest. This is where, if I was an announcer, how I would describe it instead of these anecdotal, just generic comments. What good coaches do is they understand the capacity of their kids.
Yeah.
What can Hunter Goodwin mentally execute on under high duress?
Yeah.
Because it's different, right? Everyone can execute without duress. Everyone. But that's not the way the game is played. The game is played under high intensity, with high emotion, under tremendous strain, under loud noises, things going off in your head. Most people couldn't do a simple math equation in that environment. And you're expected to execute at a high level and to think and to process information. So the challenge, I think, for coaches oftentimes, they go into it and say, well, I have this complex plan and I know it will work. The problem is if the guys you're asking to execute on the plan are incapable of doing it, you might as well not have that plan.
Yeah.
You need to match up a plan that will mesh with and allow the talent level and the mental capacity of those guys to execute. If it's too complex, you're going to see a lot of busts like what we saw at Auburn, and you're going to see cataclysmic failure. If you can give them some wrinkles that they can understand and play fast, I think that's where you reach perfection, right? You have to figure out what can they do and what can they not do, and don't call things that they can't do. I remember every coach I played for would say this: you never call a play that you've never run countless amounts of times in a game. So there might be some, double reverse, throw it down the field. Like take Dan's game 4 or 5 weeks into the season. They did the throwback to the quarterback. That was not a play that they just pulled out of their hat.
Yeah.
I guarantee they've run that play to Jared Goff multiple, countless times. And is it an every down play? No, but it's not a play they've never practiced.
Yeah.
So you have to find the right plays to call that you're comfortable with, that you ran in the spring, you ran in the early fall, and you've run throughout the year. Now, we're moving on. Offense.
What do you need to see from this group? What could you see them succeeding at, and what's your biggest concern when the Aggies have the ball?
So, 1, run the damn ball. 2,
Wait. run the damn ball without Le'Veon Moss, hopefully with Chase Basantis back, which I think will be massive.
Yep.
By run the ball, what I've been saying, I want to see if you agree with me. I've been saying, and they did it against Auburn. And by the way, Auburn's defense was third.
You cut me off.
I know. Auburn's defense was third in the SEC. When I'm saying run the ball where you don't have to give it up and you can run it for 4 quarters. In other words, I'd love to gash them. I'd love for Colin Klein to figure out how to crease this unit and Marcel Reed. But if not, like, you have to run it to where you don't have to abandon the run and you can stay ahead of the chains with 2, 3, 5-yard runs. Go ahead. That's my thought.
Okay, I'm going to.
And you will interrupt me several more times.
I did not interrupt him one time, by the way, is that I think when I say run the ball, to clarify, if you're going to go with a quarterback that is a good above average runner, right? I'm not going to give him elite, but above average, right? Mm-hmm. He's got to be a part of that, right? Mm-hmm. You have to attack them in the run game, and your quarterback has got to be very active in that effort.
All right, we're back, and by the way, he doesn't want to come on short notice, but we are joined by my man Justin McQueen over here, Lightning himself.
Lightning, baby. Lightning.
Has played against, in the A&M Texas game, I think, a battle. What year was that? Your senior year?
That was 9.
That was 09. So that was the 09 was the shootout. Yeah. That was the shootout, playing corner against the Colt McCoy and that all. Yeah, that was the 40.
Is that Sherm Dog?
49. Yeah, it was Sherman. Right. Yeah, 49-39 game. Yeah. So we've been talking, obviously, and we're talking about the offense. And wrap it up. But what does Marcel Reed? I thought he had a good game against Auburn. He'll probably sit there and point out where he could have had a lot more. That's the kind of dude he is. But I thought he showed a lot. You're down 21-0 on the road, and to bring that team back. What do you need to see from Marcel? Like, and my point is this offense, do you think Marcel / the Aggie passing game, do you think that they need to hit big plays in this one? Or do you think they can just do a consistent 4 quarters of putting drives together? Or do you think this is going to be one of those games where, kind of like we just talked about that 09 game, I think A&M opened that game with an 80-yard touchdown to Jeff Fuller, and then it was just kind of on from there. What do you think needs to happen offensively?
I don't know how I will say this, that if you're going to, it's not uncommon to take shots in the very beginning of a game, because for me, this game was so emotional and it was so much energy that for about the first 15 plays, I couldn't even think, right? So there's kind of a window of opportunity to take advantage of some maybe overzealous emotion and stupidity. However, that is a circumstantial comment. I think that the reality is we have to be more effective. And what's so frustrating for me is we've done it in spurts, but it's been inconsistent. We've got to be effective, as I said, running the ball, but I also think a big part of our offensive success, I think, is going to be tight ends. And I think that I'm not sure how to say him, the Ostrom kid, he said it right. And I kind of ripped him early in the year a little bit. I was not too nasty, but I thought he's really improved, Billy, in his run blocking. Okay. I think he's gotten a lot more physical.
I like to hear that.
I see him improving week in and week out. He had a tough drop the other day and a big critical down and distance at Auburn. But I think overall he's proven he can go up and make some tough catches. And there's a couple of 50-50 balls where he's come down with it. And really he came down with that one, and at the last moment it kind of got out of his hands. But you got to have Trey and you've got to have Ostrom make plays in the passing game. And to me, that is such a key fundamental piece with a running quarterback. Those guys are really going to attack the middle, that second, third, if you will. Yeah. And we've got to have some play action pass that you can't really set up without the run. But there's so many things you can do with the Marcel Reed, and I really want to see our coordinator call a very effective game. They're over-aggressive on the defensive side of the ball for Texas. I think there's another thing you can take advantage of with some screens and some tight end screens and things of that nature. Yeah. So I think it's time we see the best version of our coordinator, and I think it's time that we see the best version of our tight ends and backs, which will be a big piece of our successful passing game if there is one.
All right, in closing, if you get all of that, and if A&M wins on Saturday night at Kyle Field with the whole country watching, and they earn a berth in Atlanta in year one under Mike Elko, and it doesn't end there, obviously, then we see what happens from there. But if they win this game Saturday night, what does that mean for Mike Elko and this program to accomplish that in year one? You'd be talking about 3 top 10 wins, a win over Texas, advancing to Atlanta in year one.
I'm not big on these moral victories, but what I am going to say is this, is that if everything that we have talked about confidentially and privately, and that I think we believe, if everything is different with the culture, if everything is different with the accountability, if everything is different with the attitude, all those things lead up to how you perform. They really do. Yeah. And what I do know is when you're doing those wrong, you should expect teams to perform badly under pressure. Mm-hmm. If all of that stuff is true, if everything in those areas have been improved and has been accentuated and prioritized, we should expect to go into this game and our guys play their ass off. They should play hard. They should play smart. They should play with emotion, and they should execute. And I believe all those things are different, and I think we're going to see the outcome of that in this game. Yeah. And if they play the way that they're capable of playing, do I think we're here and Texas is here as the pundits might make you believe? I do not believe that. Yeah. And I played the game, so I think I have the authority to say this. I think it's like most pro games, that there's a very, very tight margin of error. And I think Vegas agrees with me because they don't have them picked to win by 26 the last time I looked. Yeah. So I think if they do all those things and things are different, we should see, I like and believe that playing at home in Kyle Field, which I think is the best venue in the world, both pro or college, can be a difference maker. We should see a very, very tight-fought game. And as long as it's that, I want to win. I want to win so bad I can taste it. But what I'll be disappointed in, woefully and very critical of, is if we don't do that.
Yeah, no.
I'm not going to predict. You know where I stand. I'm an optimist. I think we're always going to win. So,
are you? Are we calling you an optimist these days?
I'm an optimist.
Okay. You kind of are. You are.
I'm an optimist surrounded by pessimists.
You are. You're surrounded by the biggest.
That just suck the life out of my optimism.
You really are. Like some of your picks for your inner circle, your wife. Yes, you are surrounded by pessimists.
Oh my Lord!
And look, I
have pity on my soul.
I think A&M is going to come back and look more like the team we saw against LSU. I think part of that will be home. Part of that's who you're playing. Part of that is, I think they have to have gotten back and gone out there Monday and said that was unacceptable Saturday. They have to be. I think the preparation this week has to have been incredible. If they win this game, I mean, I think the sky is the limit. It doesn't mean if they don't. It's not the end of the world. This is a successful first season, regardless, because of what's already happened and what you alluded to, what we know that he's built and is building. But if you win this one, man, it can go decidedly in another direction. Not just for the future, but for right now. Like playing Georgia for a berth in the playoff, to hold up an SEC title trophy, to win rings. That Georgia team's not unbeatable. The playoff field, look at it. We talked about what a terrible job the committee's doing right now. It's there to win a game or two or make a run. Then it's a signing day next week. The portal's the week after that. So this is a massive game. For a lot more reasons than that. I'm looking forward to it. I know you are. I know you guys are. We'll get back to it on Friday morning.
I got one more thing to say.
Go ahead. Close us out.
I've never met this young man, but when he walked in, there's a certain level of credibility that he has with me because he played the damn game, right? Yeah. And I know that when you play this game, there's a certain amount of sacrifice. Not a certain amount. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of setback. It requires you to do things that 99.9% of people aren't willing to do, okay? Yeah. What I think these kids have to understand is you do all that. You sit in the backyard as a little kid and you imagine having this stage. That is what is so rare and so precious. It is very, very rare that anyone gets the opportunity to walk out on a field when it's this much at stake.
Yeah.
And it's the two biggest powerhouses in the biggest state and the baddest state in the entire U.S. Do not be the guy that looks back on that Saturday night and goes, I wish I'd have done this or I wish I'd have done that. Because when it's gone, it's gone. For some, it goes on, it's done in college. For others, it ends in the pros. But when it's over, and there's nothing else in the world that you can do that will give you that feeling. It is unmatched. It'll never be met. I don't give a shit what drug you take. There's nothing more pure and more sound than getting your ass out there and competing in front of the people you love in the state of Texas. Don't take it for granted. Play your ass off.
There you go. Hunter Goodwin. Couldn't have said it better myself.
What's so fun about fun? It can take any form. Be a sacred ritual.
Who wants chicken?
Or a random whim. For us, fun is everything. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.
An extension of the Loochador Podcast brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Cord Samuels is with us, the ghost of Texas football on Twitter.
Cord.
Extension cord, umbilical, guitar. I can rattle off a few.
Yeah, you've heard them all?
Yeah, a few times.
Cord, I'm happy you're here. I told Billy, I don't know, whenever he talked about doing this, a few days ago, a week ago, whenever it was, I was like, he's one of the guys I don't mute on Twitter because I mute everybody, and you're not muted.
I'm going to do my best to get through the rest of the week unmuted then, because we do have probably the most pressing couple of days coming up as far as this whole Twitter Cold War and who we can tolerate and stand. So we'll see what happens. I'll do my best, David. I appreciate the honor, though. Thank you guys for letting me come out here.
Yeah,
We've made it 13 years. I think everybody can handle a couple more days. Is it just me? And by the way, Cord's a friend of mine and is actually living up here right now for how long?
Up until New Year's.
So he's not an Aggie, but he's a College Station resident.
And has lived here
and
before.
He lives in Aggie land, and he's very familiar with Aggie land. So I always say this, like I said this on one of the Texas podcasts I was on yesterday, like I can be your friend, my sister's an Aggie, I can be your family member, and I can root for y'all's demise at all times because I know you guys are rooting for ours. It's rare that you find the Aggie or Longhorn that truly sticks with the I want both teams to win. But I see your picks every week, and I will say you've been more confident about A&M week to week this year than I think even sometimes we have been on the show in terms of covering spreads and winning games. Why is that? What do you see?
Well, I mean, honestly, coming into the season, I was pretty high on the Michael Elko hire. I'll never forget the feeling that I had when I realized that y'all weren't going to hire Mark Stoops last year, and the writing was on the wall for the Elko hire. Like what he brings defensively, obviously a great mastermind, brings a lot of pressure, which I'm a big fan of. I love aggressive football. But coming into this particular season, man, I like the home schedule. You're talking about Notre Dame, Missouri, LSU, Texas, all at home. Thought the away games were manageable. You had, at the time, Connor Wigman returning. And so I had A&M coming into this game at 9-2 and playing for a spot in the college football playoff. I know a lot of Aggies that watched my pregame or preseason prediction show were like, really? Year one, Mike? Like, we would love that. We would take that, run with that in a heartbeat. And so a little bit of it is trying to kind of follow that feeling I had preseason because I do like what you have on the defensive side of the ball. I was I struggled a little bit with the Auburn game. I'll be honest. I was just like, it feels like everybody's kind of picking A&M. That one, I think I just took the bait on. I knew it was going to be a tough game, but outside of that, I like to follow you guys, pay attention. I read your guys' stuff. You got to know your enemies a little bit and what you're up against because what A&M and Texas do on the football field directly, it affects one another for sure.
And I will say this: it does. The recruiting battles and how it impacts. I think Mike Elko and his staff and A&M have already won this year in terms of, like you said, for the first year to have the success they've had. I think they've already helped themselves tremendously. I'm talking about 26 and beyond. I feel like what Sark's done at Texas, win or lose this game, they're going to the playoff. Their recruiting momentum is going to continue to roll. in a weird way, I don't know how much. I don't think the result hurts either team at all because of what the atmosphere is going to be like, the spotlight, like I said, where Texas is at, what Elko's already proven in year one versus what most coaches struggle through in year one. But I do think if A&M were to win and then go playing it, like what that would mean for the trajectory of their recruiting would be massive. I wanted to ask you, because I just mentioned that first year under Sark, and you know, you and I, you're going to be moderating another battle Friday. Okay, we're going to have a round 2 of the L that he presided over for me. What is that? Friday at 11 a.m.
Friday 11 a.m.
Me via Atwell.
Why
again.
was it an L?
Well, the bookmarks. It was like a bookmark
Fest.
just fest. But they lost the next day, so maybe we can regenerate that
So I'm
magic.
sure you got something in the arsenal.
Well, I've come a little more. I'm a little more prepared this time. But secondly, that first season, a lot of those bookmarks are going to be what I said about Texas when they hired Sark and after year one.
Mm-hmm.
And year one is very difficult for coaches. You can look at Heupel, you can look at Sark, you can look at Venables, you can look at Napier, name them, Kirby Smart. What did you think as a Texas fan and someone that follows that program so closely? What did you think of coming out of year one under Steve Sarkisian, and then what was the point in your mind that you, if you didn't already believe it because of that year, if that shook it, at what point did you go, okay, this is the guy, this is going to turn out exactly how we hoped?
Now, this is a tough question for me because it's going to seem like I'm patting myself on the back a little bit.
Yeah, no, but I'm curious.
I got trolled on Twitter pretty heavily because, I mean, even days after the Kansas loss, the season ended with a 5-7 season, no bowl game, no bowl practices, you know, recruits making fun of us, you know, on Snapchat and posting it all over, you know, social media.
Yeah.
I liked what I saw from Steve Sarkisian as far as ability to scheme points, ability to have an identity on offense. If you go back and look at that season, Texas really, really struggled in the second halves of games where our depth was coming into play, where teams were making adjustments and maybe we're not adjusting, but at the same time, like, we had so much turnover back then between the portal every year. Obviously, this is coming out after Herman departed and Herman was fired. And I liked what I saw. Texas jumped out, 28-7 versus Oklahoma, and what Sark, even just having an offensive line that was competent. I mean, we went through so many bad offensive lines.
Sounds familiar.
Tom Herman, Herb Hand, we really, really, really struggled. And so it was never going to be an overnight fix, even though that's what we really, really want and really, really want it bad as people who bleed burnt orange and maybe maroon. But, it was every game played out the same. I think maybe one game in conference did we not have a lead at halftime.
Yeah.
We were either tied or winning every game except for one. And, the Kansas game, we lost. But we got down like 3 scores in that game and were battled back with it's against Kansas yet. Yes, but battled back with a bunch of guys that wouldn't even play on this roster. I'll just say that in 2024 for Texas. And it's not to discredit those guys. It's just that I never really was wavering on the offensive side of the ball. I knew that defensively, Peter Kwiatkowski was going to have to make some changes, you know. But if you look back at what he had done at Washington, his defensive took a jump from year to year to year, especially in the beginning. And so for me, it was like, hey, like it's going to be a patience thing. Can we have the patience? We had 3 years under Strong, 3 years under Herman. I think with Sark at this trajectory, he'll have more time than that. But obviously, then you turn around, you win 8 games. In 2022, you go 8-4, you make a bowl game, which you dropped to Washington. But then for me, the moment where, I was kind of always there. I've had a love fest with Sark, but the moment where it was kind of, I think, it resonated with the entire fan base was when they went into Tuscaloosa, ran the ball down their throats for the final 7.5 minutes of that game. The culture issues, the label of, maybe even soft or just country club program. All those
I think they
things.
needed that win. I think you guys needed that win. I mean, there has to come a point, right, where the rubber has to meet the road, and you're either one thing or you're not. And they did say that night they're not. That's an interesting day. That was the day that A&M went down to Miami and they were up 7-0, maybe even 10-0,
I think it was 10-0,
17-7. And then lost that game and just kind of got run out even though the score, they made a rally at the end, but they kind of got run out. And then later that night for Texas to beat Bama, that's when
Double-edged sword.
in this league, in college football, but especially in this league, that's when you start to get seismic activity. And if Jimbo Fisher wasn't fired at that point, I think that day really set that to where, hey, this is probably going to happen. And it's what goes on in rivalries. This is a rivalry. It's been, like we said, it's been a Twitter, social media rivalry. It's about to be real again. What does this rivalry, what are some of your memories of this and what it means to you as a guy that grew up in the state of Texas, coached some football, and knows a lot about both programs?
Man, I really don't think I've ever been asked, maybe my go-to memory in this game. I really appreciate that question, to be honest, because it made me think through them.
Yeah.
I tell this story often, but I met my wife in 2010. 2011, we've been dating over a year, and we decided to go to that game together. And, we were kind of like, with everything that was going around us at that game, I think we kind of both knew then. It was like, man, if we can make it through this, rooting for opposite sides, we'll be built for, make it through a lot in life.
Yeah, he buried the lead there.
He's married to
an Aggie, married to a Longhorn.
Hey, there we go. Well, you know how this goes.
No, actually, I don't, because my wife roots for A&M. Sorry, Longhorns watching. I'm just being honest.
But so I got my wife turned on to be a UT volleyball fan now.
Okay.
So when y'all beat us the other night, I could see the confusion on her
Yeah,
face.
that would be a tough one.
Because our daughters love volleyball and play all the time, and we go up and watch a lot of UT volleyball. Yeah. We're down the road in New Braunfels, and plus they play in San Marcos and at UTSA, so they're right there. But overall, man, I think 2011's up there, of course. For me, though, I think it's back in 2009, and just being there. And I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like I had written A&M off in that game. I didn't think y'all would have the ability with Gerard Johnson, and Jeff Fuller and Washaku, and they're a great receiving core. I didn't think y'all would have the ability to put up 39 points and scare the ever-living heck out of Texas that day. I really did not. I knew the defense had been struggling for A&M a little bit, and I was confident that Texas, who had struggled a little bit offensively, I thought they would, find their footing some. But, man, Jeff Fuller, 3 touchdowns, really fun to watch in that one. It was a really fun environment for a college football game.
We were talking to Jeff Fuller the other day, and I had no idea. I knew Jeff is one of the more unsung, excellent, outstanding players at A&M. He got there right at the beginning, and then they've had a hell of a run of receivers since. But he was the first one in a while. You had 1 year of Robert Ferguson, 1 year of Albert Connell. But Jeff Fuller coming in and really was the first elite. And they flipped him, and I'm trying to think of who they flipped him from, but he was such a big time recruit.
Yep.
And they scored 7 or 8 touchdowns against Texas in his career, which is a wild amount for a wide receiver. And like you said, 3 in that one game. I think for me, my lasting couple memories of that game for me, I got 3 of them real quick. One, I was in high school, and I wasn't a fan of either. I didn't grow up, whole family's from New York, grew up in Sugar Land, had Aggie friends, had Longhorn friends. Just so happened to have a few more Aggie friends, and they're the ones that get the credit for getting me here because I just applied to both, and I always joke it was A&M, Texas, Columbia, and USC. I don't know what the hell that was. But watched the Aggies and Longhorns, and I watched R.C. Slocum go for 2 and the win with Bucky Richardson in Austin. And they didn't get it, and I was like, damn, I love the balls on R.C. and that quarterback was so good. Bucky, who's now one of my really close buddies, one of the best dudes ever. But back then, I was like, damn, I like that. And then the other one was 90, I guess it was 97. It was they play at 10 a.m. on Friday after Thanksgiving. The stupidest crap, 10. Imagine getting up at 8 a.m. to go to Kyle Field to watch A&M Texas, and it was the most epic, gladiator environment. Do you remember? You were much younger at this time.
What year is this?
97.
97.
It was pouring down rain. There was so much
It was a night
lightning.
game too, right?
No, it was 10 a.m.
Oh, 10 a.m. Sorry. Yeah.
There was so much lightning in the area. Like in 2024, that game's delayed for 4 hours. You
Okay.
could see the bolts of lightning like striking behind Kyle Field as the Aggies and Longhorns were going at it. That one stands out to me, and then obviously the bonfire game.
Yeah,
Those are the ones.
that's literally, so I tell everyone the first memory I have of this game is 98. And
Yeah.
I can remember Musburger's call on Ricky's run.
Mm-hmm.
I remember knowing that A&M was really, really tough that year. I can remember that. I know y'all were already going to the Big 12 championship game. I remember a lot about that Big 12 championship game. But
Yeah.
so just before that, man, 97 is probably the last year that I don't remember. Outside of that, man, I could almost tell you score for score. I will say this. I woke up the morning of the bonfire game in 99, and I am more concerned about beating A&M than anything else at this time. So I'm a child. I'm 11 years old, and my dad says to me, "Hey man, Texas isn't going to win today. Just want you to know that." And then he said, "And it's okay." It's like it's
Yeah.
okay today. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" In my head, no idea what he's talking about. It literally took me 30 seconds after the game, to realize as a youngster to realize what that all meant, man. So. Definitely wanted to share that. I thought that was really cool of him.
Yeah, that's pretty poignant, and it just felt that there's sporting events that feel like they were just already predestined, predetermined, and obviously Texas is ahead in that game, and I think it was 17-7 or so. A&M had to come back, but it's just like everything about the way that thing went and finished. It was just like, man, it's cool just knowing. This is sports, and we're going off topic, but whatever. This is sports, and what makes it so special is like you see guys that played in that game, and some of them have had the highest of highs, and I'm going to see Dante Hall Friday. We're going to get together, and Dante went on to have just an incredible, A&M or an incredible NFL career. You see guys like there were so many but they're ups and downs. So many of these guys haven't had the same story. And that was like the pinnacle. Some of them are no longer with us, I'm assuming, probably on both sides this many years later. But you see, we get Randy McCown in here, and you talk about that game, and you see the gleam in the guy's eye. And he's got a great life, great family, all this, but it's just like a little gleam. And, you hear Matt Baumgartner talk about that catch, or I mentioned it last night. Jay Brooks, we're in Atlanta with all his buddies who are all fellow police officers with him. He goes to the bathroom, and they're like, "Is this guy, was it Jay good or what?" I go, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Jay blocked like 12 kicks in his career. Have you not seen this play?"
Yeah.
And they've never seen it. He's never mentioned it to him that he, won the bonfire game on that blitz of Major Applewhite and with the strip. And he's got all these good buddies, and they don't know what he did. So
That's crazy.
It's so interesting. That's what's cool about just sports in general and what we do, of being able to kind of sustain those relationships. That's what I was going to ask you, and I want to do one more thing about the game, and then I want to talk about relationships and friendships, both on social media, across enemy lines, all those type of things. But
Okay.
let's talk game for a second. Saturday night, if Texas wins, what do they do? When you're breaking down this game on Sunday and you say, here's why the Longhorns win, what do you think you're going to be saying?
If Texas wins, we probably did a pretty good job of protecting the football. That's a big bugaboo of ours. I think we fumbled 6 or 7 times last week in the Kentucky game. Obviously didn't lose every one of those, but I would look at fumbling penalties. That's been a big issue with us on the offensive line, especially talking about going in a road environment, probably the craziest one that any of them have ever played in, I would assume. Kyle Field will be ruckus. Mm-hmm. So, 110 or potentially more at 1,000 Aggies, it's going to be wild. So looking at those two things, I think that's going to be where I have the utmost importance on taking care of those two things. But then after that, I think Texas will have ran the football a little bit better than we have lately. Quintravion Wisner and then Jaden Blue, I think, are going to have to be a part of this offense. I'm curious to see if we can protect Quinn against your pass rush, and so I think we'll have to run the ball well, slow it down. So I'll go protecting the football, limited penalties, running the ball a little better than expected. It was my three main things we do well.
And what I think you kind of double answered there, which means it's a good answer. But what are your primary concerns coming in here, and what do you think? Where is it that A&M will most challenge? If A&M keeps Texas, let me rephrase that. If A&M advances to Atlanta, what happens?
Texas probably turned the ball over. We might have committed a few penalties, but outside of those two answers, we probably gave up a few explosive plays to Marcel Reed and the Aggie offense, y'all had a field day with us in the backfield as far as what would he give up 6 or 7 sacks to Georgia, another 4 to Vanderbilt. So, something along that line, y'all probably made a play on special teams. Y'all do have an advantage in special teams. I firmly believe that. Texas has a little bit of a struggle on special teams the last few weeks, so I'll go with those for you.
You know what? I completely agree with you. There's a couple of them that stood out while you were saying that. And number one is, David and I have talked all week, right? A&M has to get after Quinn. That D-line, if you want to win the game, we are going to have to look afterwards and say the defensive front was the difference.
Absolutely.
It's the biggest. It's the position on the field where no matter like Banks and Williams and the Texas offensive line, like it is the one position though where you can really say, okay, you can match talent for talent, and there's no question. But the Aggie front has to play like it.
Yep.
And Quinn Ewers, I think I've been saying this all along, Cord, and this is what I get got for a lot, and I think I've been right the whole time. I think Quinn is inconsistent, and I think Texas fans are starting to see that. I think he's when you let him get into a rhythm, he's great. He might go for 400 and kill you. So a lot of games I see where it's, and I don't know what it is, if it's the coverage and he's holding on the ball a second too long. I don't know if it's like you said, Vandy and Georgia just flat out getting after him, but he doesn't. His highs and lows are pretty extreme. And I think people were saying the same thing about Connor before he finally lost that job. The other thing I completely agree with you on, and I don't know if we've talked much about this, David, is I don't think the Aggies win this game without big plays on offense. I think I said it earlier this week. You're not going to 12 play 75 yards this team. You could do it once, but you're not going to win a football game by going 10, 12 plays against Texas and just consistently moving the chain. So I think you're right. I think any formula for an Aggie win is going to have to be some plays, not just with Marcel's legs, but over the top, maybe because of him scrambling to set that up.
Absolutely.
Cord, I know that they're 10-1, so the defense obviously has been very good in these games, and they're giving up 12.1 points per game. But how have they fared against mobile quarterbacks?
So you look at Oklahoma, Michael Hawkins. Now let me say this: Marcel Reed is a lot further along in the passing department, than Michael Hawkins is. Michael Hawkins is a terrific athlete. Now that Oklahoma offensive line is at the time under Bill Bedenbaugh is a lot worse than what we're going to see at Kyle Field with A&M on Saturday. Oklahoma did not put up much of a fight in this game, and this is not a knock. I have plenty of Sooner friends, family even. That was a JV high school offense, essentially, that we played. Yeah. Okay, that was not much of a test. Not many. The three of us, Mike could have gone out there and got a few tackles against that OU offense.
Run some twists on them.
Yeah, man. A couple stunts, little dog zone blitzes, whatever y'all want to do. And then you look at the Arkansas game with Taylon Green. Taylon's a bigger athlete than Michael Hawkins. Might have more straight line speed, but he's not quite as twitchy as Marcel is. I think both players throw a pretty beautiful deep ball, to be honest. I like the kind of the float that Marcel's and Taylon Green's as well has. And we did a really good job with Taylon Green. Now, in my opinion, I think Texas is going to implement a very similar plan, and they're not going to be shying away from it or trying to disguise it. They're going to do everything they can to try to take the Aggie run game away with Amari Daniels, try to slow down Marcel Reed before he gets going in the open field. And so if you can do that, what happens? You're probably forcing a lot of third and longs. Maybe even second and longs, and even then, Coach Klein is forced to throw the ball. That's what they're going to want to do with Michael Hawkins. The same thing. With Marcel Reed. Same thing they did with Michael Hawkins. Same thing that they did with Taylon Green. Make them one-dimensional. Know that they're going to throw the ball, and then when they do throw, make sure that you're containing. Make sure that you're protecting. They love to have Anthony Hill on one edge. Colin Simmons on the other. You let them use their speed and athleticism and just kind of collapse that pocket. And so we've done well, but I definitely think this is by far the best of the mobile quarterbacks that we've seen so far.
Billy, that's something he said there, the third and longs, right? That's something that A&M actually did quite well against Auburn in the comeback, even though they ended up losing. But you cannot continue to play third and long and win football games. And it's been a problem.
And nobody in football can. You know, even the best teams can't live in that. You know, Patrick Mahomes can't live in third and long. He's the closest thing that can even do that. But I just think this one's so interesting to me because I think if you look at they've played 22 games between them, and I don't think there's any question that Texas is the best team A&M's played this year. And I don't think there's any question that Texas A&M is the second best team that Texas has played this year.
Without question.
In the toughest environment.
Without question.
So that makes for a freaking fascinating matchup to me. And I hadn't thought about that out loud, but I think that's very accurate. In 22 games, one of them's playing the best team they've played, one of them's playing the second with that environment to add to it.
I will say this. I caught a lot of flack on my channel, before the Red River game because I asked a couple of different guests. I said, hey, is this the first year that the A&M game is going to be, a lot more meaningful to you? It's going to be more impactful than the Oklahoma game, so we haven't obviously had the A&M game for a while.
Yeah.
And several of them were, they were like, what? The Oklahoma game is always bigger. It's always going to mean more. Like, which they had, at that time had only lost to Tennessee, I believe.
Yeah.
They'd still beat Auburn. So coming in at 4-1. And I was like, by the end of this year, that A&M game, I know y'all are all still, we had a lot of fun with the Notre Dame loss. Some of them a lot more than others. But, they all had fun. But a lot of people wrote you guys off as far as a playoff contender, and here you are. You still have a chance. You control your own destiny. The last game of the regular season, and so it is funny, man. The first year back, it's very special. That we have what we have going on with all that what's at stake, and then obviously you talked about recruiting wars and everything that's naturally at stake anytime these two teams play in general. But I will say one thing: I'm a little perturbed that our softball teams don't have no series this year.
It's so ridiculous.
We split the volleyball series. I'm already going to be at Reed Arena early January when we get over there, but nothing on the diamond for the ladies.
I can't believe they did that. And I mean, there's no way. It's one of those things, and I always talk about it. There's no one in that room in the SEC that when those things are kind of being put together, they go, guys, time out. How can we not play A&M and Texas in softball? Number one, it's the first year back. They should play in every sport. Number two, did you not see what happened last year? Do you not look at the rankings and what this is, how do you not set that up? I'm with you. I mean, and that's the biggest thing about getting a rival back. And it's why I think A&M Texas is a bigger rivalry than anything in the SEC, including OU, outside of football. I get the deal of Texas and OU fans saying their rivalry is more to them. And I know some Texas fans that don't, but most do. And it's the meeting in the middle in the same historic venue with the uniqueness of the crowd split right down the 50-yard line. I get all that. You can argue me on the Iron Bowl. I don't think you can argue me on the cocktail party. I don't think you can argue me on Bama, Tennessee. You can't argue with me about the Egg Bowl. I think A&M Texas is one of the three biggest rivalries in the league now. It's that, Iron Bowl, and Red River. This weekend, it's going to be bigger than the Iron Bowl. It's going to be bigger than Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
That's wild to think of. But when I say rivalry, I'm talking about not Texas fans tweeting it's 10-07 and OU still sucks. But when it comes to, other than softball with this OU Texas softball, but when it comes to the Aggies and Longhorns playing soccer, playing softball, playing volleyball, men's basketball, women's basketball, tennis, whatever, we all get, and I say we all, I mean everybody, there's an added element that we love it so much when the Aggies beat Texas in anything. And Texas fans love it so much when it's the other way around. And you don't try to hide that, but some do. But you see it in their responses. It's like you're a little too joyful about that one to pretend like you don't care.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this rivalry, Aggies and Longhorns, is bigger than any of them, because everyone in this state, I feel like, grew up, even if you didn't end up at A&M or Texas, but you grew up listening to Aggies and Longhorns bicker from when you're in elementary school, Thanksgiving dinner. You sit there with your mom, your mom or dad. You sat there with, there's something different about it, and I'm so glad it's back.
Yeah. Let me ask you, what does this game mean to Texas? Not because it's A&M, but because of everything, including it's A&M. Like, A&M has to win. Texas is in the playoffs, right? So, is there that same, obviously they want to win the SEC in year one. That's obviously, but is that same motivation? Is it the same thing with different things at stake for them?
Absolutely, and that's a fantastic question, yes. And I could probably talk for an hour and a half about what this game should and could mean to Texas. And I don't want to, please don't be offended by this, or don't let this sound like a belittling comment whatsoever, because it's not, but it's just the ultimate reality of the situation. But, this is a stepping stone on a path towards bigger goals, essentially. Okay, and that's the one answer that you can take, because, hey, you are competing for a national title, and the best way to do that would probably, be winning the SEC title, which you have to beat A&M to do that, getting a first-round bye, only playing a couple games, and so that's one answer. Now, on the other hand,
by the way, that's not belittling, because I think Mike Elko's message to his team would be the same thing. Like, I know it's Texas. I know they got a number 3 by their name. I know what this game is. But it is the next step towards A&M's got 2 of them to take. This is you don't get the second one without the first one.
No, that's exactly.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Exactly right. Yeah, and I have to say that I stole that from Bob Stoops in an interview he gave before the Texas and Oklahoma game back in 2004. Yeah, I was really offended, to be honest. I was like a 14-year-old
calling
kid.
Us a stepping stone.
It's like, we're a stepping stone. We haven't beat you in 4 years. I know, but no. So ultimately, that's what that's what you're trying to do. It's where you're trying to get to as a national title, and obviously you got to get to Atlanta, get a bye. It would be the best way to do that, and not ruling it out. But then as you peel back the layers of the onion a little bit, and you start to look at, okay, well, they haven't played in 13 years. Texas has had bragging rights for 13 years. I don't think many of us or them or anyone associated with Burnt Orange wants to give up any type of bragging rights, because it's been a little bit more fun to have to have that under your belt. But then you go and you talk about what this means as far as recruiting. These guys all know each other. These kids, I know both schools are recruiting a little bit more on a national basis now, but these guys all know each other. Sarkisian has coached against Elko, Alabama, and A&M. I mean, PK and Klein have coached against each other the last couple of years. There's familiarity all within this matchup. It's everywhere. And
that's
so
interesting.
there's going to be a lot of people that just naturally, it's like, hey, it might not be like, I don't like you, but it's like, hey, I don't like playing against you. Or I don't like coaching against you, and it's time for me to get the upper hand here in this game. And so state pride, man, I think Steve Sarkisian has done a pretty dang good job dialing in on some of these outlier games, because this is an outlier game. This is a special one. Okay, you look back at 2022 Oklahoma, which they showed up again with a borderline high school team. It really sounds like I'm knocking the Sooners today, but
it's 49-0.
It's 49-0. Okay, the Michigan game this year, we essentially wiped those guys out in one half of football. We didn't even have to do anything there in the second half. I really think that he will have a good plan for this, and I think that when he's kind of excited, and on the flip side, man, he's due for 1 or 2 stinkers a year. No coach is perfect. We've seen it happen. Okay, but I think that it brings us to the play, the excitement, the energy of the team. You could go on forever, man. This means everything to a lot of people, even though it's just a single regular season games. It means think about what it means for you guys and for us in our house, and to have these homes that are houses divided with Aggies and
we
Longhorns.
Literally all 3 have house divided.
Yeah.
That's sister.
Means everything, right?
It just moving past that now, in closing, I want to talk to you about kind of how we crossed paths and met. I know you had messaged me like, hey, come on. And I started kind of following what you were doing. What'd you tell me? You were like, hey, I'm just going to keep asking. I'm not worried about it. And it's like I start following what he's doing, and you're getting people that on various levels, whether it's like, site owners of different sites from other schools, but also just, fans that have kind of garnered a following on Twitter. And you just thought, hey, I'm going to start doing regular podcasts and sit downs with people out, plenty of Longhorns, but also outside of that. And it's funny that I just feel like it's a little bit different the way you've done it. And talk about what went into your thought process there, how it came about.
So, as you know, I made the whole Twitter account a while back just kind of as a spoof, making fun of Texas football and a lighthearted way so that it maybe didn't take it, so much to heart when we were struggling. And I've, as you know as well, I've coached high school football. I've been around football my whole life. I love the game, love talking about it, the X's and O's included. And so with that, people, it seems, started to appreciate some of the takes. Yeah. And I was never the guy that was kind of jumping all over the Aggies or the Sooners. And it's like, just like you guys, I hope you lose every single game you play. And I hope every time you go to Norman or Auburn or Tuscaloosa, you're down 77-0 after 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong.
You had to say 77.
That's a shot.
That's only happened once. Okay.
And you gotta love Fran, right? But and so, but with that being said, you're still people as well. You don't deserve to be treated any different type of way because of who you root for in college football. And so, as long as you're respectful towards me, I've always been more than willing to be respectful towards you. And so that's kind of how that whole account works. And I just want to talk college football with people that love college football. Now with you, Billy, I will say this. I'd forgotten all about that interaction. I definitely messaged you asking if you'd come on the show. You responded saying, you might have some interest. I told you, hey, let me know when or there, or here or there, whenever you can. And I don't think we talked for a little while after that.
Yeah.
And that's when I messaged you and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm not above tagging you on the timeline every day until we come work something
that
out.
Works. I love that.
And so, and that was you're literally the only person that I've done that to. And I was just like, you know what? I respect what Billy does. You can ask a lot of Texas accounts on that. Not that you would, but you can ask a lot of Texas folks. I've told a lot of people I think that you're a low-key genius. I told you that in person the other day.
I'm glad Nuño heard
and so you know,
low-key.
You give credit where it's due, and sometimes it's hard to do that on the football field. So if I'm typing up a nice, oh wow, A&M just got a high 4-star defensive end that we were also in the mix for. That's a great get for them. It doesn't feel good to say that.
Yeah.
But I do want people to understand that I love college football. I love talking about it. I love all the scheme, the X's and O's, the recruiting nature of it. I mean, it's all a blast. I have fun with every bit of it, and I'm really appreciative for the help. Really.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on. And I got pulled on though whenever you had the Friday. I forget what game y'all were previewing.
Georgia.
No.
Oh.
Prior to that,
okay.
when Atwell called me out on the show, and that's when I was like, all right, he's got me. Yeah. I'm going on.
That was Mississippi State week.
Yeah, it was. It was Mississippi State week. So then I was like, okay. And then it's fun. Like, just like we're having fun here, it's a fun show. It's you ought to go on there. Hopefully there's more games. If there's a playoff game, maybe a SEC title game, maybe Nuño should go on there. And I'm the same way, Cord. I remember, Route 66 and I was sitting there when you said 77. I'm like, what is the worst one I can remember?
Oh.
And that was actually the one. And was that Makovic or
Makovic?
Yeah,
Makovic's
last year. And then UCLA got y'all the next year.
Yeah, Major
with Rick
Applewhite.
the year '98 when A&M Texas beat A&M.
So in case you want to check out my memory, it's 49-31 UCLA victory. I was 10 years old at the time. I was so mad, and I was like, 10 years later, I was like, dude, we were playing a top 5 or top 7 UCLA team. Yeah. We did all right that day.
Here's the funny part, or the tie-in. Number one, we're not going to bring up our experience at UCLA at the Rose Bowl, but really interesting tie-in there was 98.
Mm-hmm.
You guys lost early to a really good UCLA team. You know how UCLA ended that 97 season? I'm kind of giving it away.
I mean,
they played A&M in the Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
Beat the Aggies in the. I think A&M jumped out in that one 16-0. That was Datwin, Dante Hall. They had lost to Nebraska in the SEC title game and jumped all over. That was Cade McNown, Skip Hicks,
Oh yeah.
That was a really good UCLA team, both that 97 and 98.
That's the only game I remember from the 97 season. Literally, I can't even remember Texas games that year, but I can remember it might have been the first college football game I actually sat down and watched, but it was the Charles Woodson, Michigan, and Washington State Ryan Leaf, I guess, in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
But
if you want to test memories, I'll give you another one about that UCLA team. So we went end of 97, start of 98. You know what happened at the end of 98?
The Big 12 championship?
Texas A&M. So you had Kansas
Ohio
State was like number 1 or 2.
playing for a
UCLA
title.
was going to play for the national title that year. And that was when, I believe, you can fact check me on this, they had a hurricane game that had gotten pushed back from non-conference from September. They ended the season on championship weekend. They went and played at Miami. And a running back from Miami by the name of, I believe it was somebody by the name of like Edgerrin James.
He's good.
Yeah, pretty good. Ran for like 300 yards, something crazy. Miami knocks UCLA, so UCLA lost, and then A&M beat K-State.
It's
and
hard.
It shook everything up on championship weekend. And so Tennessee and Florida State played for the title.
Michael Bishop was one of my first favorite college football players, so it really hurt to see you guys beat him up there in that second half pretty badly. I think you turned him over a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Bishop. Okay. Just while we're waiting on Hunter, I'll say this. Michael Bishop, when I first started writing for this little publication, I was still in college. Aggies Illustrated. I wrote like a recruiting article. That was the very first thing I did. And I'm living with these guys that are on the team. Those are my roommates, Dan, Seth, Leckler at the time. And RC thought I was like an agent, like I was runner for an agent, you know, and like, who's this guy that's with my guys? And I was going to pick up some friends to eat that were working in the video lab over there at A&M, the film guys. And I get out of the car and I see RC pull up to the weight room. And he comes, like, he's waving me down. All my buddies think they're going to get in trouble for associating with me. And they literally run off and go into the lab as RC's getting out of his car. And, you know, I'm in college, so this is the head football coach. And he comes briskly walking over to me. I'm like, oh, he's going to just like rip my ass out. And I'm like, I don't even know. And he's like, hey, I just want to thank you for, I'm like, for what? He goes, it was an article I'd written about Michael. I was writing a recruiting article, and everybody was pissed because Michael Bishop was at Blinn, and how did he not end up at A&M? Well, for those of you that are listening that know, like, back then, the Big 8 and then what turned into the Big 12, those schools had very different admission requirements for coming out of junior colleges. Michael Bishop at the time could not have signed and played in a Texas 4-year, like he had to go out of state. Right. And I wrote that just stating a fact, but I just remember all my friends took off. RC came running over, and we've been like friends ever since. It's pretty funny. I should have brought that up. It was his 80th birthday dinner a few weeks ago.
I didn't even realize that Michael Bishop was at Blinn.
Yeah. Michael Bishop and Cam Newton.
Yeah, I watched Cam play against Navarro Junior College in the JUCO National Championship.
Oh, wow.
And my Lord, warming up, you know, throwing footballs from the 40 on his knees, just throwing darts, posts, fades, and I was like, hold on a minute, that's not a normal JUCO player.
I watched one of my roommates that like a year later, he lived with us, but tried to tackle. He was hanging. Lonnie Madison, who's now the head coach at Bridgeland, and they're still going in the playoffs.
Okay.
Lonnie was hanging onto Michael Bishop as like probably a 250-pound defensive end, like full body weight, like getting like, you know, like a lion hanging on to I'm trying to think of a big animal, like a
wildebeest.
Wildebeest, Cape buffalo. Like Michael Bishop was bigger than Lonnie, and he's trying to hang on, and Bishop throws the ball, and it was incomplete. He threw it like 75 yards with someone, a 250-pound DN hanging on him. What in the world?
I think they beat us like 41-7 that year. Pretty sure, something in that neighborhood. Yeah. I was like, this guy's fun to watch. I'm glad we don't have to play him again.
Yeah, well, hopefully A&M can conjure up some of that upset magic this weekend, Cord. We appreciate you coming on. I feel like that's a good way to end it. Put that out in the universe. that plus me being on the podcast again might ensure
Yeah.
some maroon magic.
Cord, thank you,
Oh
man.
no, I'm honored to do it. Anytime,
We'll be doing
guys.
lunch soon, dinner. He's here. You need to come with
Yeah,
us. We
let's do
have
it.
some
Man.
good conversation. Always a good conversation with you. I appreciate it, buddy.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. Means a
Thanks,
lot.
Cord. Ghost. Appreciate
Yes,
you.
sir.
Fun, memories, friendship. We're here for all of it. Here for the big moments and the small ones too. We're here for unforgettable triumph, momentary misfortune, and the impromptu throwdown. We're out here each day, chasing something great. Call it adventure, call it play, we call it fun. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.